Well, good evening, everyone. It is a little bit later here on Thursday evening. It's just before 9 o'clock. Wanted to get on, hopefully, do a little bit of a shorter video and look at the potential for some severe weather across much of Texas and even parts of Oklahoma here on Friday. So, what we're looking at here, this is the visible satellite imagery. Obviously, we've got the sun setting across the eastern half of the United States currently, but we can see these storms that are ongoing in the Texas Panhandle and even out just a little bit west of the DFW area between Abilene and Wichita Falls, as well as up in the higher terrain of eastern Colorado and western Kansas and up into Nebraska. So definitely have had some severe weather, a couple really big time storms. Didn't quite produce a tornado. It doesn't appear near Amarillo, but pretty amazing supercell there. And it looks like this is going to be mainly what's triggered this is there is a slow moving cold front that's going to be moving south over the course of the overnight hours and then into tomorrow. That's going to be our main trigger for severe weather across Texas tomorrow. And so, do want to take a look here first at the overall environment. Again, this is looking at those forecasted dew point temperatures. When we go to Friday, let's say again about 3 p.m. on Friday, we're going to have certainly a moist air mass ahead of this front. One thing that you can see is kind of watch this area right here. You can see that front pushing south across Kansas and then into Oklahoma as well. And just ahead of that front is where we're going to have the best moisture, both in kind of southeastern Oklahoma here, dew points near 70 degrees. But then also here across North Texas, we're going to have dew points into the low to mid 60s, which is certainly sufficient for severe weather, especially where we get some of that instability and that front starts to kind of move into the area. So we've got plenty of moisture that's going to be in play here. Again, we've got this cold front that's going to be sagging south and southeast across much of the day. When we look at some of our instability that's going to be in place here, let me back up a little bit in time. Again, this is kind of right about 2 p.m. here. We can see we've got instability in place, 2,500 joules per kilogram of CAPE, and really that storm juice and that instability that you need. Anything really about 1,000 or more is certainly supportive of severe weather. So more than enough of that instability kind of streaming up here across the hill country, up into North Texas, and then maybe kind of right along the front here around the Red River into southeast Oklahoma. We are going to have that instability in place. So again, certainly all the ingredients, moisture, the instability. We're going to have the cold front sagging in. That gives you a little bit of that forcing to get those thunderstorms going. So certainly all of that is in place now. One thing that we do have to keep in mind is that tomorrow, because the cold front is going to be the main triggering source, we're going to see that a lot of these winds are going to be kind of parallel in that when we look, the cold front is kind of right along here. And then we've got these winds that are kind of moving kind of along the cold front here. They're not kind of parallel to the cold front. And so what that's going to mean is that we're going to have a tendency for storms to potentially initially be discrete, kind of individual storm cells, but then likely pretty quickly we'll see those kind of grow into a line. And so I think that's why tomorrow is more likely a damaging wind threat. Certainly we will see some hail out there. I don't think it's the biggest hail that we've seen maybe in some past events over the last several weeks. But certainly some of those stronger cells early on when they're by themselves could have some larger hail. But I think more of a big time rain and also a damaging wind threat might be the main threat. Can't rule out a tornado if you get a storm merger or the storm can kind of stay by itself and kind of really harvest the atmosphere that's around it. You could see a brief tornado, but doesn't look to be a huge tornado threat type of day tomorrow. And so I think that that's mainly what we're going to see is, again, the ingredients are in place here for storms to kind of fire along and kind of out ahead of that cold front. And when we look at that simulated reflectivity, one thing to note here is that we have these ongoing storms here in the panhandle. They're going to form kind of an MCS, a mesoscale convective system that's going to move kind of to the east, northeast across Oklahoma and Kansas in the overnights, maybe extreme northwest Texas. But this is going to push generally off to the east and northeast. And so, what that's going to do is that it may have some influence on the type of weather and where we see storms tomorrow, in that this may create, as this pushes off kind of here to the east northeast, we may get a little bit of kind of an outflow boundary here out ahead of the cold front with some of those better dew points, kind of some of that leftover rain cooled air. And sometimes wherever you get that outflow boundary, that can certainly be an area of enhanced lift to see some of those storms fire early on in the day. So that will be something that it's tough for models to pick up on. It'll really determine on how these storms progress overnight. But that will be one thing to watch is if there's some sort of a boundary that sets up from these early morning and overnight storms, that could certainly influence where we see those storms fire tomorrow. So I think that that's certainly to note here. Again, it's going to kind of move from the panhandle across Kansas and Oklahoma. And then we see that once we get to around that 2 p.m., probably early to mid afternoon, we're going to start to see some of these storms popping up kind of just ahead of that cold front. And so we first get a couple storms here in southeast and kind of eastern Oklahoma. And then it looks like maybe south of the Red River here, that's where we start to see storms kind of fire in this arc out ahead of the cold front. And so as we move forward in time, this would be about 5 p.m. We've got storms kind of in and around the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex. Again, Friday, 5 p.m., kind of rush hour activities after the work week. That's not ideal, but that does look like it's going to be the timing. And then as we move forward, those just generally kind of move to the south and maybe to the southeast as well, and then more kind of pop up out in the hill country as well. And then as we move kind of into those overnight hours, we see storms kind of move generally off to the south as that cold front moves south as well. So again, I think the timing for severe weather is likely going to be somewhere between about the starting around that 2 3 p.m time frame, probably north of the Dallas Fort Worth area, and then starting to kind of pop up along a line here and then moving south over DFW probably around that rush hour time period for Friday, and then moving south from there and impacting the Waco area and parts of the hill country as well. So again, not a huge tornado threat, not a massive severe weather outbreak by any means, but we are going to have the cold front. It does look like the ingredients are going to be in place for severe weather, to impact a lot of Texas and even parts of Oklahoma as well tomorrow. So certainly make sure you have a way to get those watches and warnings if you have kind of Friday afternoon, evening plans. Might need to be flexible tomorrow and maybe even have some indoor plans because I think it will be a stormy Friday afternoon and evening, at least across the Dallas Fort Worth area and parts of North and Central Texas as well. So hope everybody has a good Thursday and certainly a good Friday and then a good weekend to come. And I'll see you back for the next video.